there is perhaps nothing more symbolic of Star Wars than lightsabers. Since their introduction 50 years ago in A New Hope, lightsabers are probably the most iconic and recognisable parts of the galaxy far, far away. The perfect weapon, steeped in mythos and held by the strongest characters in the Star Wars universe. So beautiful yet powerful, and somehow Disney managed to ruin them. So let's take a look at what went wrong and why lightsabers just aren't what they used to be. Issue 1. Surviving lightsaber injuries. Now if you watched any of the recent Disney Plus shows, you may have noticed a peculiar trend, which is that characters are surviving what should be fatal lightsaber wounds. When so many characters survive being impaled by a lightsaber, we don't really know what a finishing strike looks like anymore, and when a character's dead or alive. The characters in Star Wars now have to have their bodies completely cut in half to ensure that they are actually dead. In Darth Maul's case, not even that was enough to kill him for good. And do we just accept that a stab through the torso has a 75% chance of survival? Just what are the rules of lightsaber injuries anymore? In the days of the originals and prequels, if your limbs were cut off, you could survive. But if you were stabbed once on the body, you were dead. End of. Just ask Qui-Gon Jinn or Kit Fisto. But if we look to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, on 3 separate occasions, a character gets stabbed by a lightsaber, and each time, they survive. We had the Grand Inquisitor shake off Reva's impalement.
Revenge does wonders for the will to live, don't you think?
And Reva, who not only gets a lightsaber through her body as a Padawan, but also gets struck by Darth Vader again years later. And both times, she recovers, without any medical assistance. Then we get the newest member of the I was stabbed by a lightsaber and survived club in the Ahsoka show, Sabine Wren. What's weird with Sabine is that at that point in the Ahsoka show, she was completely unable to use the Force, or at best, has a very, very weak Force ability.
I have known many Padawans. Your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
Thanks.
In the same episode, Baylan lightly grazes the arms and legs of New Republic security guards, and they die instantly. So even within the same episode, the damage of a lightsaber changes drastically, depending on plot armor. Now I want to address a few arguments that I've heard in the defense of how inconsistent Disney have made their lightsaber injuries. So in a moment, I'll tackle these points one by one, but first, let's see if there is any logic at all in where these lightsaber injuries occur and their survival chances. Here we have a body map, and here I've put the exact points on the body of lightsaber wounds that characters have survived. The Grand Inquisitor gets stabbed right in the chest, Reva gets stabbed on the right lung and then in the liver, Sabine gets stabbed by Shin in the kidney, Kylo Ren in the intestines, and Darth Maul gets completely cut in half above his legs. Now if we look at the characters that have been killed by a lightsaber strike, we have Qui-Gon Jinn, who gets stabbed by Darth Maul pretty much in the same place that Reva did. Snoke, who gets cut in half just above where Darth Maul did. Han Solo, who gets killed by Kylo Ren with a lightsaber through his upper chest. And Aegon Kolar gets stabbed in the lower abdomen. So now, when we overlay these body maps, we can see that there is absolutely no rhyme or reason between where on the body a character gets stabbed and whether they survive or not. Qui-Gon and Reva have within a few inches the same stab wound, and one survives and the other doesn't. Aegon Kolar is struck in the lower stomach, and Darth Maul gets his entire stomach cut in half, yet Maul survives and Kolar dies straight away. Now it took me 15 minutes to find the exact location of all of the on-screen lightsaber body impalements. So why can't the billion-dollar company Disney Lucasfilm give some form of consistency? By, say, having the characters who survive lightsaber impalements getting stabbed in the shoulder, or just missing the vital organs on the right-hand side. It's obvious why they don't do this, because they just don't care. They want to have an epic fake-out death moment without considering the negative ramifications these miraculous survivals have on previous Star Wars moments. If Rey can heal Kylo Ren, then why can't Kenobi do the same for Qui-Gon Jinn? If Reva survived Darth Vader's lightsaber thrust twice, then how many Jedi that we thought Vader killed could also be alive, surviving his attack the same way Reva did?
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
When Sabine got stabbed by Shin in the ending of the first episode of the Ahsoka show, I would have been more surprised if she had in fact died, which shows just how ineffective lightsabers are becoming. If I was a Sith or Jedi in the Disney Star Wars era, and I managed to stab my opponent in a lightsaber duel, I would then just swipe around up and down, left and right, hitting every organ I could, just to make sure they were actually dead. So now I want to address the arguments that defend characters surviving lightsaber injuries, since Disney bought Lucasfilm. The two I often hear are that Star Wars characters have always survived lightsaber injuries, from Vader chopping off Luke's hand in the originals, to Darth Maul surviving and Anakin losing both legs and arms in the prequels. And all of that was before Disney bought Lucasfilm. So firstly, to bring up Luke losing a hand to Sabine being stabbed in the torso is comparing apples and oranges. When Vader cut off Luke's hand, sure, Luke was in pain, but he was still conscious, and at no point did Vader believe that cutting off Luke's hand would kill him. Reva, the Grand Inquisitor, and Sabine were all left by their opponents that doubt the lightsaber strike, as they were under the completely understandable presumption that they were killed by the strike. And it goes without saying that losing a hand is much less life-threatening than being stabbed in the body, where all one's vital organs are stored. And as for Anakin losing his arm and legs in his fight with Obi-Wan, he had to wear a cybernetic suit for the rest of his life in order to stay alive, and again he wasn't injured on the torso. Lastly, we come to the case of Darth Maul, and it's a fairly valid point, as it's true that Darth Maul was brought back by Dave Filoni and George Lucas in February 2012, 10 months before Disney acquired Lucasfilm in December the same year. However, you have to consider that Maul was brought back in the Clone Wars animated cartoon, and it goes without saying that in the cartoons, more crazy things can happen than in live action. So I'm certainly not excusing Darth Maul's return as anything other than a retcon by Filoni and Lucas, which effectively opened up the box for characters surviving lightsaber strikes. But it's a little bit more complicated with Maul. And in case you don't know, Darth Maul's return was George Lucas's idea, in order to bring him back for his planned sequel trilogy. Lucas sold his plans for the sequels to Disney, and in those plans, Darth Maul would spearhead a criminal organisation with his apprentice Darth Talon against Luke, Leia and Han Solo's New Republic. But the fact still remains that Maul is the only occasion in the 40 years of pre-Disney Star Wars where a character was brought back from what should be a fatal lightsaber injury. In Maul's case, at least a semi-believable reason is given for his return. That reason being that he focused purely on his hatred for Kenobi, and his dark side anger and lust for vengeance fueled his survival. And it's not like he went into a Bacta tank and returned to the old Maul from before his battle with Obi-Wan. He completely lost his mind for around a decade, and it took Night Sister dark magic to restore Maul to something resembling his old self. On top of this, he was also much stronger in the Force than Sabine, Reva, or the Grand Inquisitor. So yes, Maul returning is a plot contrivance, but we can at least put an asterisk next to it. Issue 2. Beskar. When I think of a lightsaber, one of the first things that comes to mind is how it can literally cut through anything. Blast doors, weapons, limbs, shields, droids, AT-ATs, Simply anything at all in the Star Wars universe can be sliced through with a lightsaber. And that's what makes Jedi and Sith so powerful. However, that is now no longer the case. Beskar armour makes lightsabers little more than a dull sword. So from only being able to be blocked by another lightsaber, can now be countered by any Mandalorian, bounty hunter or ex-Imperial who manages to get their hands on some Beskar. And on top of that, Beskar can be crafted into weaponry too, meaning that a lightsaber, the awe-inspiring mystical weapon of Force users, is only as strong as a metal that anyone can use. Now I know that Beskar comes from the expanded universe, and there's a very long history of Mandalorians using their craftsmanship to create items to fight against the Jedi. But you can't tell me that a bounty hunter deflecting lightsaber swings by just raising his arm doesn't make lightsabers worse. Also, do you remember the traitor stormtrooper who takes on Finn in The Force Awakens? His baton can also deflect lightsaber swings. And it's not like this stormtrooper in question is a special, elite-trained anti-Jedi stormtrooper. He's just your run-of-the-mill trooper, with a secondary weapon that deflects lightsabers. So whether from old expanded universe lore or a new addition from the sequels, lightsabers have lost their position at the top of the weapon hierarchy to one that can be countered by anyone who happens to get their hands on some Mandalorian Beskar or a stormtrooper baton. Speaking of the sequel trilogy, issue number 3, no experience required.
Talent is a factor. But training and focus are what truly defines someone's success.
Perhaps the biggest reason why lightsabers have been cheapened by Disney is that wielding a lightsaber seemingly requires little to no training. In The Force Awakens, when Finn, an ex-stormtrooper, takes on Kylo Ren, a Sith trained by Luke Skywalker and Snoke, Finn is able to hold his own against him for a while, before eventually being sliced up his back by Kylo Ren. An injury which Finn recovers from after a soak in a Bactapod, of course. We then have Rey pick up the lightsaber, and not only does she match Kylo, but she beats him severely, cutting his leg, shoulder and face within her first 5 minutes of using a lightsaber. After Rise of Skywalker, we now know that Rey is the offspring of a cloned Emperor Palpatine, which to a small extent explains why she can immediately use a lightsaber so well. But nonetheless, the overall effect is that a weapon that once required years of training, in The Force Awakens, within the space of 5 minutes, is used very well by 2 people who previously had zero experience with a lightsaber before. And then we move on to the universally loved and totally not controversial The Last Jedi. And don't worry, I'll be as concise as I can, as we all know that criticism of Rian Johnson's film has been done to death since its release 6 years ago. So in The Last Jedi, we pick up from the cliffhanger ending of The Force Awakens, when Rey gives Luke his lightsaber. And what does Luke do? He tosses it away. This is the first of many attempts from Rian Johnson to subvert expectations, which essentially means to do the unexpected, no matter how much that ruins your story. And later in the film, we see the same lightsaber break apart, in a visual representation of letting the past die. And in this case, the past did die. The once mighty weapon belonging to Anakin and his son Luke, the lightsaber that killed Count Dooku, cut off Mace Windu's hand, killed younglings, fought Darth Vader, and was essentially part of every pivotal event over the last 40 years of Star Wars, was destroyed. Oh, and then it was brought back in Rise of Skywalker, without any explanation at all. So there we have it, how Disney ruined lightsabers in just over 10 years. From characters surviving what should be fatal lightsaber attacks, lightsaber-proof armour, instant mastery of the blade with no training, and then Anakin's lightsaber being discarded and destroyed in The Last Jedi, and then brought back in Rise of Skywalker, and then buried. So now I'd like to know, what do you think? Has Disney ruined the lightsaber for good? Or are the issues I've raised not so important to you? And what do you make of Disney's 11-year stewardship of Star Wars? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new here, then perhaps consider subscribing to Film Club. I'm currently reviewing every episode of the Ahsoka show, as well as a new movie later this month, The Creator, which is directed by Rogue One director Gareth Edwards. Thank you for watching, and see you again.